All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a seriously brutal, fast-paced story about a city under siege by a cop killer and the rogue detectives who are forced to bend the rules to stop him. It's a gritty narrative that is absolutely steeped in violence, frustration, and the agonizing limits of the law.
So meet Barry Weiss, and trust me, this guy is not your average street criminal. He is a force of chaotic violence who completely revels in his own brutality. He actually wants the world to know exactly what the police are up against, dropping us right into the high-stakes action with pure, unadulterated malice.
Now, to deal with this absolute chaos, we get introduced to two vastly different law enforcement archetypes. And honestly, the dynamic between these two cops is just as compelling as the villain they're chasing.
It's a classic clash of styles at the precinct. On one hand, you've got Sergeant Brandt. He's a brutal, old-school brawler who, frankly, wouldn't hesitate to use a hockey stick on a suspect just to make a point. On the other hand, there's Acting Inspector Porter Nash. Polished, prestigious, and brought in specifically to enforce by-the-book professionalism in a pretty struggling station.
And things escalate into an absolute nightmare for the department fast. Weiss is incredibly methodical. First, there's the tragic point-blank shooting of WPC Sandra Bates. Then a horrific hammer attack and arson on Inspector Roberts right in his own flat, which is then followed by the murder of a third cop in a car park. The sheer audacity of it all puts the entire force on high alert.
But here's the thing about Weiss. He isn't just killing for the thrill of it. He's a total narcissist looking for fame. He actually reaches out to a sleazy tabloid journalist named Harold Dunlop, demanding 50 grand in cash for exclusive details and his brand new moniker, The Blitz. He is literally turning his murderous rampage into a twisted, high-profile PR campaign.
So, with the stakes literally life or death, and a massive media circus rolling into town, Brandt and Nash have to put their opposing styles aside to follow this psychopath's scattered breadcrumbs. The investigation immediately shifts into a desperate high gear. Through some really rigorous police work, they actually start closing the net. They connect Weiss to a local gym, trace some discarded parking receipts back to a black Jaguar, and finally, after a massive pursuit, they corner him at the Paddington train depot. On paper, it looks like a huge, definitive victory for law and order.
You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Well, upon his arrest, Weiss doesn't cower or confess. Nope. He arrogantly manipulates his rights, he demands a lawyer, a sandwich, and, get this, says he wants to update his Facebook status. He is completely unfazed by the interrogation room, and we quickly realize exactly why he's so cocky.
48 hours. That is the exact window the police have to officially charge Weiss with the murders. Without hard, irrefutable evidence by the time that clock runs out, they are legally obligated to let a suspected serial killer walk free. The pressure is just immense.
And it all starts falling apart thanks to a maddening string of bad luck and systemic loopholes. The fire completely destroyed the forensics at Inspector Roberts' flat. Crucial CCTV footage from the car park erased simply because the system's memory was full. And key witnesses are just way too terrified of Weiss to testify. The police know for a fact he did it, but legally, they've got absolutely nothing.
Which brings us to a massive turning point. When the rules meant to protect society are exploited by the very monster you're trying to catch, you're forced to ask a really devastating question. What good is law enforcement if they can't even protect their own officers? This frustration leads to a pretty shocking reveal from Porter Nash. Remember, he's the polished, by-the-book guy. Well, he opens up about his own dark history, recounting a time he dealt with an untouchable predator who'd committed horrific crimes against children. Nash admits to using extreme vigilante violence to stop him. It proves that even the most pristine officer has a breaking point where the law just isn't enough. So, the boiling point finally hits. Those 48 hours expire, and seemingly defeated by a broken system, the police are legally forced to let Weiss go. A known cop killer literally walks right out the front doors at the station. Drunk on overconfidence, Weiss puts on a stolen police uniform. He thinks he's completely outsmarted the law and is now totally untouchable. But what he doesn't realize is that for Brandt and Nash, the rules of engagement just drastically changed. Instead of playing by the book, the rogue cop and the inspector go totally off the grid. They quietly tail their target and manage to isolate Weiss in an empty, quiet parking structure. It's far from the public eye and way out of reach of the legal protections he was just abusing. And in a brutal climax, there are no Miranda rights read.
Operating entirely outside the law, they execute Weiss using an untraceable, non-regulation weapon. They meticulously stage the crime scene to permanently end the threat and to make sure they never face the consequences themselves.
And this is where the ultimate dark irony kicks in. The next media report drops, claiming that the Blitz has struck again, taking out one final unidentified victim, which is, of course, Barry Weiss himself. The detectives brilliantly use the killer's own violent moniker and methods to cover their tracks. The public thinks the killer is still at large, but the police know the threat is gone for good.
So I want to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. When the rules meant to protect us basically become a shield for the guilty, does true justice require breaking the law? It's an uncomfortable, violent gray area, and we'll leave it up to you to answer that for yourself. Thanks for joining us.
Hello Hollywood movies lovers, new trailers, Spider-Man branding, new dates, movies, story watching for. Thank you for, and please more subscribe and support your little brother for me. Hey, YouTube is not mass content, it's my content. I am last point, I am contribution and short little contribution is my parts, is my way. And guys, thank you for supporting and subscribe, please. More less beginning next more expensive Hollywood movie stories coming soon.